You're tuned in to Dynamics Talk, hosted by the one and only Dion Taylor.
Hey guys, Dion Taylor here. If you've ever had a technician come to your house to fix something, you know how important it is to get a summary of the work that was done. The same thing goes for field service organizations. Being able to send out a document with all the details on the work that's been performed is also helping with customer satisfaction. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. We're going to create a Word document with placeholders that we can then populate with data from Dynamics 365 Field Service or Dataverse by using a Power Automate flow. Let's take a look. So let me show you exactly what that functionality entails. So here you can see that I have my work order here, work order 633. I have been working on that work order out in the field. Let me also open up this work order so I can show you the products and services that have been marked as used, because obviously we don't want to send a document that has products and services on there that are still in the estimated status. So you can see here I have my booster pump and my radio volume switch, and for services the hourly service fee has also been set to used. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and set this work order to completed, because that is going to be the trigger for this Power Automate flow to be kicked off. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is now a completed work order, and I'm going to give it a second here while it changes color as well as it changes from the status, and there we go. So what's going to happen right now is my Power Automate flow is going to populate a document with data from Dynamics 365 Field Service. It's then going to send that document in an email as an attachment to the originator of this particular work order. So the person that reported this particular work order. So I'm now navigating to that person's inbox so you can see what that email or what that attachment really, what that looks like. And this is the email box, right? The Gmail inbox for this particular person who was the responsible contact for this specific work order. So if I drill into this and then open the PDF associated with it, we can see all the data that will be populated from Dynamics 365 Field Service, work order number, service date. We have a service date over here, and then also the materials and services and all of the amounts on here as well. All right, so now let me show you how I did this, and I'm going to start by showing you how we can create or how we can configure first our Word template, and then I'm going to show you how we can then create a Power Automate flow that will do all of this automation for you. So this is the Word document that I'm going to use as a template to push that information from Dynamics 365 Field Service into, and I'm going to use, like I said earlier, Power Automate flow for that. So you can see that I've already put in some placeholders like the service dates, also the full name of the person that reported this work order, the account name, the address, the phone, the work order number, and the total amount. Now you'll notice that below the materials and the services, I have not entered any data yet. And the reason for that is because we're pulling information into these different tables from different tables, right? Does that make sense? So the materials are going to pull the work order products in here, and the services will be from the related work order services table. So I'm going to do that a little bit later. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the placeholders here inside of Microsoft Word so that we can see them show up in our Power Automate flow. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on the Developer tab. Let's just go ahead and always show the ribbon. And the way you can do that is just double clicking on the placeholders that you just typed in, right? That's all I did. I just typed that in. Then what I do is I just copy that. Then I'm going to click here on my plain text content control. Again, this is going to make this particular placeholder show up inside of Power Automate when I'm creating my Power Automate flow. So I'm going to click on that. Then I'm going to click on properties. And what you enter here is the actual name of the placeholder that will become visible inside of your Power Automate flow. So I'm going to do that for all the fields that I have here. All right, so all the fields have been added, but I'm still going to need to add placeholders for the work order products and work order services tables I just mentioned. So you can see I already have both of those tables on that Word document, right? My materials and my services, but to allow data from those tables to be added to this Word document, I'm going to need to add a repeating section content control to the table in the Word document. So we're going to do this again from that developer tab. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these empty cells over here in this materials table. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this repeating section content control over here. I'm going to click over here. And then again, we want to put the properties in there. And this is going to be for, I'm going to say products. I could also name it materials or whatever I want to do, right? So these are going to be products. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to do the same thing below the services table. Again, that repeating content control properties. I'm going to say services. There we go. Now, once we've done that, I'm going to add the individual fields into the table. So I'm going to start to put the name of those placeholders in here. This is product quantity. Then we also want product name. And then we also want to put in here product amount. And we're going to do the same thing for the services. So I'm going to say service duration, service name, and then service amount. And now we're going to do the same thing we did earlier. We're going to double click on that and we're going to add those plain context controls. So after this is done, now my Word document, my template is done. So I'm going to go ahead and save my Word document. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this on a SharePoint, inside of a SharePoint folder. So let's just go ahead and pull up SharePoint as well. And here we are in SharePoint. You can see here I have a public group named D365 CE documents. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm calling this work order templates. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload that file here into this folder. And then let's just go ahead and drag that over and upload that so that I can grab this folder, populate the data, all from within Power Automate. So here we are in make.powerautomate.com, and I'm going to start my new flow, and I'm not going to select a template. This is going to be an automated cloud flow, and I'm going to actually skip this so that I can get my full page. Now, I'm not very fond of this particular designer, so I'm going to switch back to the old one. Just because it's easier, I feel it's easier to follow what I'm doing over here. So what I want to do here is I want to use a Dataverse trigger because I want to launch this flow or trigger this flow, I should say, when a field changes, the system status on a work order is set to completed. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to go and say I choose modified. The table name is work orders. So let's just go ahead and use that. And then the scope is going to be organization. And then the other thing that we can do is we can actually set selected columns, right? That would actually trigger this flow. So I'm going to use my MSDYN system status. That's going to be the field that will trigger that, but I only want this to trigger if that system status field equals, and you can see here the value. So that's where you would go into that system status field and get the value of that completed status. So that's really all that I did here. Now, the next thing that I want to do here is I need to get the billing account and the contact who reported that work order so that I can push some of that data into that Word document. So I'm going to, again, use the Dataverse connector, and I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to click here on the next step, and I want to get a row. I want to get a row by an ID. Let's see here. Here we go. And the table that I'm going to be looking for is going to be accounts. There we go. And then my row ID is coming off from the trigger, right? And I want to get the billing account because that's where we're going to be sending this information to. So I'm going to say billing account, and we want to get the value, right, of that. That will be that unique record ID that we have. Now, some other options here is I can leave this blank, or I can say, hey, only select certain columns to come back. I don't need all of the information on that billing account. So I'm going to say, give me the total amount and the completed on columns. Beep. Now, in my next two steps, I'm going to first need the billing account, and then I also want the contact who actually reported that work order. So I'm going to add a step here, and this is going to be another Microsoft Dataverse step, and I want to get a row by ID. And what I'm looking for, like I said, is the billing account. So that's the accounts table, and the row ID is going to come from my previous step when a row is added. And this is that billing account value. This has that unique ID for that account in there. Now, remember when I showed you earlier that document, it had the full name of the contact, the name of the account, the address, and the phone number. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, for the columns that I want returned is the name of the account, the address, this composite of that address, and then a telephone number as well. So that's going to give me that. And then in the next step, I want to again do the same thing, get a row by ID. And then for this, I want to get the contacts. So this is going to be the contacts table. And on the work order, this is called responsible. Oh, I cannot type. Oh, it's not responsible contact. It's reported by contact. And then again, I want to get the value so that I'm going to get that unique ID. And here I'll probably want to get like the full name and then maybe also the email address, so I will know where to actually send this particular message to. So I'm going to say I want, for selecting columns, I want the full name and the email address. Now, you probably, in between those two steps, you probably want to have a condition to make sure that this particular contact has an email address, because if it doesn't have an email address, then this is going to error out, right? So think about those types of things as well. I did not configure that for this example, but again, definitely something that you might want to think about. Now, I am also going to rename these get a row by ID steps. So this is going to get the ID and the information I need for that account record. And then the other one, let's just go ahead and rename that one as well. this is going to be for the contact information. Now, again, to put a condition in the middle here to make sure that there is actually a reported by contact that's populated in that work order, or that it has an email address, we can do that several ways. I can show you how to put in a condition here that will actually check to make sure that the work order has a contact populated in this reported by contact field, right? So I'm going to say the reported by, let's again, reported by contact. This is going to be that field that we're looking for. And again, we're looking for the value. And we're going to say, if that is blank, I'm going to go ahead and say null. If that is the case, then I want to terminate this action. So I can say terminate this action directly from here. And obviously you don't want to mark that as failed because that could be a little concerning when you see that. So I'm going to mark that as canceled. And if that is not the case, if it's not empty, then we're going to go ahead and query for that contact, as you can see directly over here. Now, for the next section, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and now get all of the work order products that are consumed or used, right? That's actually done by the MSDYN underscore line status field. So you can take a look at the line status that equals used. And I actually already did that. And then you also want to filter out those products, right, that are related to this particular work order. So I'm going to go ahead and do another step. And I'm going to say, this is again Dataverse. I'm going to say list rows. That's my first one. So I'm going to list the rows. And again, I'm going to list the rows for that product. So I'm going to rename this real quick. List rows products, because we're also going to do the same thing for the services. So again, this is going to be work order products. And here we are. And I'm not going to select columns. I'm just going to get everything. But what I am going to put in here is a filter, because I want to make sure, right, that that line status equals used. That's what this is representing. And I want to make sure that it's the same work order that actually triggered this flow. That's the work order products that I want to get. So what I'll do from here is I'm going to need the work order ID. Let's see here if I can find that. Here we go. That's my work order, the unique ID. So this is how I'm going to filter that out. Now, this is actually going to bring us back multiple records, right? So I'm going to need to initialize a variable for this so that I can grab all of those products inside of an array. So I'm going to go ahead and say initialize. Here we go. I'm going to initialize a variable. And like I said, this is going to be an array. And I'm going to call this products. There you go. And I'm not going to enter any variables just yet. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm now going to append, right, the items to that variable. So in this step, we're going to actually use the data from this step, this products, the initialized variable of products, this array. This is a container, right, where we're going to store these things. So let's do another step, and we're going to call that append. Oh, append without an S. This is append to array variable. So now we're going to actually grab all of this. I'm going to call these, I'm going to select the products one that I just created previously. And now we're going to enter a value here. Now, again, remember the names that we had over here, right? Product quantity, product name, and prod amount, right? This is very, very important for you to remember those names. And I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to start with a curly bracket. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to type in, let's go ahead and do that. Do a quotation here. I'm going to say product quantity. And this is going to be the quantity to bill. So we're going to search for that. Quantity to bill right over there. And you can see now that it's actually doing an apply to each now. And that is totally fine. That's totally fine because it's going to run through, right, the multiple products that are related to this particular append to array variable. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a comma now. Now I'm going to do quotes again, product name. And I'm going to put for this the name of the product, right? This is also why I renamed this list rows, and you'll see that in a second. So we're going to go ahead and do the name. We're going to do another comma, and we are, oops, we're going to do another comma. We want to do that over here. There we go. We're going to do another one, product amount. And we're going to set that to, don't forget your colon, total, oops, total amount. And again, right, this is from the list row products over here. And then we're going to go ahead and not go back up. We're not going to do a comma. We're actually going to do a close of the curly brackets right over here. Okay. So that's getting all of our work order products here associated with this initialize variable step. I'm actually going to rename this as well. I'm going to say initialize variables products so that I know what this is and apply to each. This is also going to be products. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want to do the same thing for my work order services. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new step, and I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to do initialize variable, and this is going to be for my services. And then I can call this something like services, and this is again going to be an array. We're going to have multiple records here, right? So then what we're going to do is we're now going to go ahead and do another initialize variable for the duration to bill. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I'm using the duration to bill field from the work order services table, right? To show the amount of time that we're billing for. And it's a little tricky because you're going to have to recalculate this field or the value in this field because it will show the duration in minutes, not in hours. So I noticed a few issues with trying to enter a calculation for this field because first I had to turn the data into that field into an integer so that I could actually perform a calculation. So in order to do that, there's going to be a couple of steps that we need to do. And the first thing that I need to do is exactly what I just talked about, right? Initializing another variable so that I can store the data as an integer later in the flow. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to again say initialize variable. Here we go. And I'm going to call this duration to bill. And this is where you're going to select that integer. And again, I'm going to rename this duration to bill. And I'm going to do I already did the previous one as well. Okay, great. All right. Now in the next step, we're going to compose. We're going to do a compose step for the duration to bill. So I'm going to go ahead and select compose. There we go. And what we're going to do here in these inputs is we are going to put the duration to bill. Oh, let me just try this again. And we're going to need the duration to bill from a step that we haven't done yet, because we need to get that from our list rows for the services. So let me first add that. I'm going to do that right below here where it says apply to each products. I'm going to say enter a new step. And we're going to do a list rows action over here where we're going to list the services. So let's go ahead and get our list rows. These are going to be the work order services. There we go. And we want to do the same thing that we did for the products, right? We want to make sure that we're filtering this based on that line status of used, and then also based on the work order ID, right? It's the same thing that we did over here. So I could even do the same thing. I can just go ahead and copy this and paste it right over there so I can get that same filtering happening here for my services as well. So I'm going to, again, rename this. I'm going to say list row services. There we go. And now I can do my compose step. So I'm going to go ahead, right? We just did the initialize variable services, initialize variable duration to bill, and we are back to our compose step. So in my compose step over here, this is what I was trying to do earlier, but you can't do it if you do not have that list row services step in there. So I'm going to look for duration to bill. And this is why I am renaming some of these steps, right? So I can see this is actually exactly what I want. I want the duration to bill from the services or the list row services step. Soon as I do this, this is going to, again, put an apply to each, because we can have multiple services related to this particular work order, right? Okay. So the reason that I'm using this compose step, which I'm also, by the way, going to rename, I'm going to say this is for compose of duration to bill. And the reason I'm doing this is so that I can refer to the output of this step in my next compose step where I can change it to an integer. And this is needed, like I said earlier, to perform that calculation on the value, right, from minutes to hours. All right, so let's go ahead and do another action here. So I'm going to say this is going to be another compose step. So I'm going to say compose. There we go. And I'm going to call this duration to bill integer. I cannot type. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put an expression in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over here. And I'm going to type in here the following. This is going to turn it into that integer. So this is going to be outputs from that compose underscore DTB, right? This is the one that I'm looking for, this particular guy over here. So I'm going to say, okay, and it doesn't like it. So let's take a look to see what I did wrong. I have too many brackets over there. Oops. I do not have too many brackets over there, actually. It needs to be in, oh, I forgot my first quote over here. That's why it's not liking it. So let's go ahead and do that again. And that should do it. There we go. All right. So now in the next step, I'm going to store this integer value, right, in this particular step in the variable that I created earlier, right? So I'm going to do, again, add an action. And I'm going to do set variable. There you go. Where is my set variable? Here it is. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set my duration to bill. And the value is going to be from that compose duration to bill integer, right? So you're going to be able to see that over here. Here's my compose integer, and that's going to be the output right over there. Now that I have the integer value for that duration to bill field value, right, I now can do that calculation from minutes to hours. So again, I'm going to add another action, and we're still going to be in the apply to each, obviously, right, because we can have multiple services. So this is going to run for each service that it returns. And I'm going to say compose. Let's see here. Here's my compose step. And again, we're going to do an expression over here. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the expression. And you can kind of see here what this is doing. Oops, that is not what I was trying to do. Let me try this again here. Come on. Expression. And I'm going to say variables. And then this is going to be duration to bill, right? And we're going to make these, set these into hours. So we're going to divide them by 60. And there you go. We just calculated now the value from hours or from minutes to hours. That's what we did over here. Now in the next step, we're now going to actually store that data in that variable that we created earlier. So I'm going to, again, add an action, and this is going to be append. This is going to be append to an array, right? Because it's going to be an array. And what we're selecting here is the services, right? The products we've already done. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have another little piece that we're going to enter over here. We're going to start with the curly brackets. Then we're going to say service duration. And I'm going to go ahead and do a colon over here. And this is going to be the outputs of the compose step that we did earlier, right? And I did not rename this one, so I'm going to do that right now. Compose duration to bill to hours. That's what we did over here. And that's what I want to put in here. So again, here is our compose to hours step. That's what we want to use for that service duration over here. So once I've done that, again, I want to add a comma here. I want to have a space. I also want to get the service name. I can do that high caps or lower caps. The service name obviously is going to be the name of the list rows services. We're going to do another comma. Oh, it's taking me up to the top. Let's go ahead and go back. And then we also have service amount. And that is going to be the total amount. Again, from the list row services. And then I'm not going to do anything else here except for a closing bracket, or I should say a curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Try to say that 5 times in a row. All right, so now we have all the data that we want to push from Dynamics 365 Field Service, from Dataverse, into the Word template. Now, in the next step, I just want to take a second here to explain that in the next step, I'm going to show you that this is actually not going to create the Word document. We're going to have to do another step for the document creation a little bit later in this flow. So the step that we're going to do here is we're going to look for the Populate a Microsoft Word template step. And I'm going to go search for Word. or Microsoft Word. Let's see what it gives me. Here we go. And like I said, we're going to populate a Microsoft Word template. So what I'm going to need to do here is, first of all, select the location. And remember when I showed you the SharePoint side where I have this document stored, this was actually on the D365 CE Documents site. That's the location. My document library is called Documents. And then from here, I can just navigate to the location of that file. Remember, we created this work order templates folder. I'm going to go ahead and drill into that and then select that Word document that I'm going to use as that template to push this Dataverse data into. I was just going to say, this is going to take a second here to load, and you're going to see a couple of things here, right? You can see here some information related to that work order product table, right? My product quantity, my product name, my product amount. I'm not going to fill those out individually because we might have multiple lines, right? For work order products and for services as well. So I'm going to get to that a little bit later. In the meantime, you can click on this little icon over here, which will collapse that section, right? And now you can see that I can enter the products over here. We're going to do the same thing in a second with the services as well. We're going to collapse that, and this is where we're going to populate those services. So let's just go ahead and enter some of these other things that we have here, right? Again, this is the full name of that Word template. And if I pull that Word template up again, right, this is that full name that we're looking for over here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the full name from the Get a Row by ID, from that contact record, right? This is the contact that actually initiated that work order. Then we're going to have a service date. We're going to get to that in a second. I'm going to look for the account name. Here we go. I'm going to look for the address. Here is the complete address of that account. Just want to make sure this is the correct one. I believe it is. Then we have the phone number, again, from the Get a Row by ID, main phone number, the work order number that is coming from that trigger. Here we go. And then we also have our total amount from the work order, not just from the services. This is why it's important to make sure that those steps are named correctly, right? So I'm going to use this guy, total amount. And now we can use the service dates. Now, since this is going to be sent out immediately after the work order has been set to completed, I'm just going to use today's date. And I'm just want to get the date in there and not the time. Obviously, you could also use the completed on field from the work order and format that, but I'm just going to keep it simple. So I'm going to click here into service date 2. Those are going to be the same dates. And I'm going to put this expression in here. So format, date, time, right? Today's date. And I only want to get the month, date, and the year. And for the rest of the world, I almost want to say, right, that are doing date first and then month, you can just switch this around if that's what you need. So I'm going to click OK here. I'm going to do the same thing for my other service date. And that is it. Now, for the products and services, this is why we did all of those things, right? For the products and for the services in here as well. So I'm going to drill into products, and you can see here, I'm going to be able to choose the variables that we created earlier. So here we're going to select our products, and for services, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to now select the services variable that we created earlier. So now that we've populated the documents, we haven't created it yet, we're going to create the file in the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next step. And then I want a SharePoint step, which is, here we go. We're looking for the create file. Oh, not check-in file. Let's do that again. So I'm going to do new step, SharePoint. And we are going to create a file. And I'm going to rename this, create file, Word. And then first of all, obviously, we want to, again, put that site address of where do we want to create this. This is on my D365 CE document site. I can have my folder path in here. That is going to be my shared documents. And then my file name is going to be work order, and then the work order number. Here we go. That's going to be my file name, but it's going to be a document. So I need to make sure that I put that file extension in here as well. And then what's going to be inside of the content? Well, that's the step that we did previously where we populated that Microsoft Word template. So I'm going to go ahead and click on here. And then here you can see the Microsoft Word document that we populated in that previous step. Now, in the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert the Word document that we created in this step, right, into a PDF. Because I don't like to send Word documents. I would like to send customers PDFs. So I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to look for Word. And we're going to do the convert Word document to PDF step, as you can see over here. And again, I'm going to select that same location, which is here, my D365 CE documents. My document library is going to be documents again, and the file, right, is coming from the previous step. So I'm looking for the name of that file that we created in that previous step, and that's this little guy over here. All right, so we just converted that Word document to PDF, but we still now, again, need to create that file. So this is not creating that file, it's just converting it. So we're going to do another step here, which is again going to be SharePoint. And this is going to be create file. This is going to be a PDF. So let's see. Here's my create file. Right, and I'm going to rename this again, PDF. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to need that site address, which we are so familiar with now since we've used this a couple of times. We're going to use the folder path, which is going to be the shared documents. And obviously you can store this wherever you want. This is just what I'm using. The file name. So again, we're looking for the name, but that was the same name, right, from this create file Word from that step. So we're going to put the name in there, and we're going to say PDF dot, again, a file extension, PDF. Otherwise, it's not going to do that. And then the content is going to be that PDF document, right, that we have over here. So let's just go ahead and grab this guy. Again, this is why we're naming those different steps. So we know this is coming from the convert Word document to PDF. Now, unfortunately, we need to do one more step before we can send out the email that has this PDF attached. I'm going to need to get the file content, which is going to include the unique ID of that file. So we're going to do the next step. And again, we're going to do SharePoint. And I'm going to look for get file content. And here it is. Again, I'm going to have to populate that site address. Again, my CE documents, and then the file identifier. So let's go ahead and look for the ID of that file. And you can see here, this is from that create file PDF, that is the unique ID for that particular file, right? So I need to grab that file from SharePoint. I'm identifying the file by the ID of the file, and then I'm going to send the email with this PDF file to the contact who reported the initial work order, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do new step. I'm going to go to Outlook, and this is Office 365 Outlook, and I'm going to send an email. Send an email. I'm going to do version 2 over here. So I'm going to send this to that contact. So I'm going to look for the email address, right, from the contact. You put your subject in here. I can say, let's just do work order. And then we're going to do the work order number. And then here we're going to put in thank you for your business, or you can make this a nice looking HTML email, obviously, as well. And then lastly, if we go here into advanced options, we're going to add here under the attachment, that's where we're going to add that PDF. We're going to associate that to this email. So I'm going to go here into the attachment's name, and I'm going to, again, put in the name field here. And you can see that, again, create file PDF, create file Word, right? We want the name of that PDF file, which is probably going to be the same, but it doesn't matter. We're going to go click on name over here. And in the attachment contents field, we're going to do the file content that you got from that get file content step. Well, we want to make sure that we actually add that here in the, in the attachments content. So again, I'm going to say file content from that get file content step. Here we go. Now we are attaching it. And that is all you have to do. And that is now, we're going to actually name this flow here now. I'm going to say work order documents to clients. I'm going to save this, and then obviously make sure that you test this as well. But this is all you have to do. It is a lot of steps, I do realize that, but this is really going to help a lot with automating sending out documents like this to your clients. And if you want to download this Word document that I used during this video, I'm actually going to put the link in there to where you can download not just the Power Automate flow, but also the Word document. I hope you enjoyed this video. These are some pretty cool things that we can do with Power Automate. If you enjoyed the video, please do not hesitate to hit that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss another video again. Thanks for watching. Until next time.